Welcome back. We are now into Unit 2 of our math already. So this is Lesson 1 of Unit 2. Today we'll be exploring metric area, and the units of measurement that we'll be using are over here in our vocabulary box. We'll be looking at square millimeters, square centimeters, square decimeters, and square meters as well. Now you will need some of this information for the next slide that Mr. Swen will explain. We're looking here at this rug, which we have a picture of. And one key piece of information is that this rug has very small knots that each fill 1 square millimeter. So keep that in mind as Mr. Swen explains the next slide.
All right, fifth graders, now we're going to take a look at this diagram, and number 1 here. It says, how many knots will a rug maker have to tie to make 1 square centimeter? Okay, well, if you look right up here, we have 1 square millimeter. Okay, but what it's showing, so that's 1 knot is 1 square millimeter. If you look in this square, you're going to notice that there are 10 rows and there are 10 columns. So 10 by 10, we know altogether in that there's 100 knots. Now they showed the squares there, but then they drew an arrow down to 1 square centimeter. So the answer, question 1, how many knots are in 1 square centimeter? The answer would be 100. Okay, now we look at number 2. How many knots will a rug maker have to tie to make 1 square decimeters? Well, this whole square here is a decimeter. A decimeter is 10 squares wide and it's 10 squares long. Okay, so we know that each square is going to have 100 knots. So basically we have a 10 by 10. So 10 of these would be 1,000, and 10 of these would be 1,000. And then when we would multiply that together, we would get actually 1,000,000 knots in 1 decimeter. So that would be 1,000,000. That's a lot of them. Okay, let's go on to number 3. Last year the rug maker made a square rug that was 9 square meters in an area. What is the length of each side? Now, I think you can tell that this question has nothing to do with the diagram or the problems that we were talking about above. It just happens to be next to it. So we know we have the answer to an area problem, which is 9 square units. So we know the sides, the length and the width, must be 3 by 3. And again, we've done a lot of area problems. We're just talking in metric units instead of the English units that we've practiced at school. Number 4, a year earlier the rug makers made a regular rug that was 4 meters by 5 meters. What was the area of that rug? And again, this is not tricky at all. We already have done this many times. We know that we multiply the length times the width. We get 20 meters, so we have a metric unit instead. And then remember, now we're looking for the answer versus here we weren't. So we need to put either squared meters or meters squared, which I labeled on this one right here.
Now, because we don't use the metric system here in the U.S. as often as we use, say, inches and feet, I just wanted to give you something that you could look at to use as a reference. So we've taken some pictures here. This first picture that I just drew an arrow to, you can see Mr. Swen is holding a coin. Now, the side of that coin that you can see pictured right there, that's about the length of a millimeter, which is abbreviated with 2 lowercase m's for millimeter. The next one is a centimeter, and that, you can see we have a picture of Mr. Swen's finger here, is about the length of the tip of one of your fingers. About. Now again, these aren't exact measurements, but if you ever need something quick to look at, the tip of your pinky finger is about a centimeter. That's abbreviated with a cm. Next, a decimeter, again, is approximately the width of a fist. So a closed fist would give you about the length of a decimeter. And that's abbreviated with a lowercase d and m. And finally, the last one we wanted to show you on here is a meter. And that can be represented approximately the width of a doorway. So you can see the doorway to my classroom here is about 1 full meter. And that's abbreviated with just 1m for meter. So this is just a guide that you can use to help you to remember the metric system.
All right, so on the next slide, remember our kind of measurements that we're looking at. The edge of a coin is a millimeter. The tip of your finger is about a centimeter. Your fist is about a decimeter. And then we have a lot of meter sticks at school about the width of a door. So I want you to kind of guess along with me as I go through this. But I do want to point out some of these measurements, they're asking for a two-dimensional measurement where they ask for area, and some of them are asking just a single linear measurement, so you have to be very careful if you want inches or squared inches, or obviously we're in the metric system, so centimeters or squared centimeters, or millimeters or squared millimeters. So they want you to be real specific with your answer. So let's do number 5. The area of a postage stamp. Okay, so think about how wide of a postage stamp is. What do you think? We know it's got to be something squared. Okay, so we're going to guess square. We think millimeters is probably, and I'm going to abbreviate that mm, which we'll see that a lot, is probably the best bet. You know, a centimeter, possibly, but it wouldn't be very many centimeters, and then all the other measurements would be too large for that. Okay, now this one's asking for a length. So again, we're not looking for a squared unit, we're just looking for a straight measurement. The length of a noodle. Well, this one can be tricky because there's quite a bit of difference between a macaroni noodle and a spaghetti noodle. But the best one that we came up with is probably just a centimeter. Probably don't have any noodles that are a meter long. And millimeters, it would take quite a few. I guess decimeters could be a possibility because spaghetti noodles are wider than your fist. Okay, let's look at number 7. The area. Now we're back to the area. What do you think would be the best unit, metric unit for measuring this? And again, it's an area. And this could be possibly 2 answers, but decimeter is what kind of the book was leaning towards, and then that would have to be squared or squared decimeters because it is, again, looking for area. Big tables, conference tables, sure could be several meters long. They're probably not several meters wide though, so we kind of think decimeter is the best answer. All right, number 8, the length of a ladybug. Again, think about what we talked about with those different keys to remember measurements, and we think millimeters would be the best one for that. Again, we have a single length, so we do not square that. Number 9, the area of an envelope. Okay, so the face of an envelope, think about how long it is and how wide it is. Probably squared centimeters would be our best measurement for that. And then number 10, the length of a sidewalk. Well, and that one again can be tricky, thinking about the sidewalk all the way across town or just the sidewalk in front of your house. Probably that would be the best one measured that we used is in meters. So there's kind of some way you can estimate and choose the right unit for in the metric system for measuring things.
On this slide, you can see that I had to come up with a number of various objects in which I could measure them using each of the following units. So looking at number 11, they asked me to measure objects in millimeters. So I have, as you can see here in this jar, some quarters that I use for doing my laundry. So I would measure the quarters in millimeters. And number 12, they asked to measure something in centimeters. So over here I've drawn an arrow to one of Bentley's toys. I could measure the length of Bentley's toy there in centimeters. You can see Bentley here was a little confused about what I was doing. And number 13, I had to measure something in decimeters. So I decided I'd measure the bottom of my DVD case shelf in decimeters. For number 14, it asked for square millimeters. So there I thought I could do a Subway gift card and measure the area of that front side of the gift card in square millimeters. Remember, anytime it's squared, you're looking at area. So number 15, something similar, squared, so I know that it's looking at area, but this time it's meters, so I needed a larger object. So I decided to take a picture of my dresser, and I would measure the top side here, the area, using square meters of my dresser. Then, boys and girls, your ticket to class is to actually take out a piece of notebook paper would work, or just a blank sheet of paper. And similar to what I did on the last slide, I want you to find objects around your house that you could measure in millimeters, centimeters, decimeters, square millimeters, remember that's area, and square meters, so another area measurement. So go ahead and look around your house and then write down the different objects that you found that you could measure with these units of measurement. Please bring that back with you tomorrow for class. We'll see you then.